Without the fans, there is none of this.
Wednesday, August 9th.
I'm so honored to be here.
Baby, you're a rock star. America's biggest super fans meet their superstar idols.
Yeah!
And compete for a once-in-a-lifetime prize.
That is correct! I'm going to take them through my new record, song by song.
You can pick a song, and we can sing it together on stage.
And the title of Ultimate Superfan.
It is up to you, America.
Superfan premieres Wednesday, August 9th on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Superfan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 327 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing well.
Yeah?
Doing well. Talked on TCAT a little bit about, it's been a full week.
Oh, yeah.
Since I dropped my youngest off at college, and, you know, my wife and I are doing pretty well, pretty good with it, but, it's tough. I woke up this morning and I was just like, oh, I miss her so much. I can't believe it's been a whole week since I've seen her, and it's going to be another week and a half before I do. So
She told me to tell you hi when I dropped the keg off the other day.
I figured so that you would be the one dropping kegs off to my underage drinking daughter. You just admitted to a crime there, buddy.
I did.
Hey, let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. Lori McKenzie.
Hey, Lori.
Jean Gwynn.
Appreciate that, Gwen.
Claudine George jumped out at her highest level.
Thank you, George.
We had Cody.
Hey, Cody.
Tammy Kilpatrick.
Hey, there's Tammy.
Aaron Chamberlain.
What's going on, Aaron?
Mickey Groom.
Hey, Mickey.
Sandra Forcier.
What's going on? Forsae.
It could be.
Yeah.
Jordan Parker.
Hey, Parker.
Vicky Ekstrom.
What's going on, Vicky?
Carly Richardson.
Hey, there's Carly.
Kara Woodall.
Appreciate that. Woodall.
Chris B jumped out at her highest level.
What's up, Chris?
And last but not least, Tim Beek.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, appreciate the new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Cami Hanna.
Hey, Hanna.
Yeah, we appreciate that long-term Patreon support as well.
We do.
We had some great PayPal donations from Debbie Hanlon.
Appreciate that, Debbie.
Deborah Jacobs.
What's going on, Jacobs?
And Kendra Lanning.
Hey, Kendra.
Yes, thanks to everyone. Gibbs, we have a lot out right now.
We do.
We dropped a Patreon episode on Saturday night about Wayne Cousin. And this was a police officer in London who, you know, had some pretty violent fantasies.
He did.
And decided to make them a reality and kind of used his position.
He did.
As a police officer to commit a very terrible crime. We also have a brand new episode out on TCAT about Alfred Brown. Alfred was 15 years old when he murdered 3 of his 4 family members. Horrific. And he used a rifle that he had received as a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
But this is a story about, you know, why he did it, why he said he did it, his mental health status, and the fact that he was only 15 at the time that it occurred.
Some shocking statements.
Yeah, made by him for sure. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We are talking about the disappearance of Leslie Ball. Leslie Ball was enjoying retirement when he went missing under mysterious circumstances. 30 years and several inquiries later, investigators cannot make any conclusive findings about what happened to him. Leslie Ralph Ball was born on September 18th, 1921. He was 71 years old at the time of his disappearance. Leslie was a World War II veteran. He served in the Royal Australian Air Force in 1944. After this, he worked as a builder. He was married twice and had 5 children, but had what was called less than favorable relationships with his 2 ex-wives, according to ABC News. Leslie had 4 children from his first marriage. They were Janine, Wayne, Michelle, and Leanne. Sadly, one of his children died in an accident. In 1956, Wayne visited his father at his factory job. He was killed when a belt came off of a machine.
Oh my gosh. How terrible is that?
Well, I have a couple of thoughts because number one, terrible anytime to lose a child.
Right.
I mean, that's just an obvious statement. But then it happens when he's visiting his dad's workplace. So that adds a layer. And his dad was there
To witness it.
So there's another layer and the way it happened. So
What are the odds?
Just horrible.
What are the odds of something like that?
I don't know that a belt comes off of a machine. I'm sure it was a freak accident. Leslie and his first wife, Margaret, divorced in the 70s. He then married a woman named Et Eisen, and they had a daughter named Lachelle. I don't know if I've ever heard of that name.
I kind of like it.
I do too. Lachelle.
Yeah.
Not Michelle.
Lachelle.
Not Rochelle.
Yeah.
Lachelle. By 1993, Leslie Ball was retired. He liked to spend his time playing golf and helping take care of his grandchildren. Man, that's the dream.
Taking care of your grandchildren?
To be retired, play golf, and take care of the grandchildren. Yeah. Now, I think most people dream of retiring early.
Yeah.
When you can still kind of really do all the things you want to do. I felt like we were working so much later than previous generations. And my uncle retired when he was 50. My grandpa retired when he was like 50. I think my dad retired when he was like 50.
That'd been nice.
We're all working to at least 65, it seems like.
I think I have to work till like I'm 75 based on my last divorce.
Yeah, maybe. Leslie was living with his daughter, Leanne, and her husband, David Phillips, at their home in Townsville, Queensland. Leanne and David had 4 daughters named Rochelle, Samantha, Danielle, and Jacqueline.
It's a lot of girls.
It's a lot of girls. Coming from a guy that has 2 girls, 4 girls, you better be making a bunch of money because girls are expensive. I'm just going to tell you right now. I mean, you have a daughter.
Oh, yeah.
The makeup, the clothes.
Just getting the hair out of the drain. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to do that myself. But, for you, when you were a kid, a couple of pair of, what were they, Toughskins or
Huskies?
Uh-huh. And, and some Kmart blue light special shoes, and you're good to go.
I was golden.
You're golden. In 1993, David was working as a laborer, and Leanne was working at a marine tourist attraction, according to ABC News. David was a former detective for the Victoria Police. David and Leanne reported that they had a good relationship with Leslie, but Leslie's daughter, Lachelle, told ABC News that he wanted to move out. So we've got our first, maybe a little bit of a conflict here, or at least conflicting statement. Now, the fact that he wanted to move out, does it absolutely mean that he didn't have a good relationship with them?
I don't know if it means that.
Because you could want to move out for a different reason.
Maybe he just didn't want to be woken up every morning by all the activity going on in that house.
Maybe. I don't know. On May 22nd, 1993, Lachelle reported her father missing when he failed to contact her at a scheduled time. Investigators established that Leslie went missing in April 1993, but the exact date of his disappearance is unconfirmed. So, all right, I think we have to take a look at this. He goes missing in April. He's not reported missing until May 22nd.
Yeah, a little bit of gap there.
Yeah, quite a bit of gap. But, if I'm interpreting the reporting correctly, he wasn't supposed to contact Lachelle, I guess, until May. So that would have been maybe the first time that she knew about it or she got concerned about it.
And then probably try to follow up and just wasn't able to get a hold of him.
And obviously we're going to have to circle back around to David and Leanne because he was living there. And from all the reporting, it was not them who reported him missing. It was Lachelle. At the time of his disappearance, his first ex-wife, Margaret Ball, was visiting and staying with the Phillips family. Leslie and Margaret did not get along. When she came to visit in February, Leslie, quote, cleared off without telling anyone where he was going. According to his family, he was gone for almost 2 weeks. So basically he said, oh, my ex-wife's coming into town.
I'm out of here.
I'm getting the heck out of here. Leslie was seen in Townsville by Anthony Hoyer, a friend of David and Leanne Phillips. The date of this sighting is not confirmed. It could have been April 18th, 1993, or as early as April 15th. Anthony Hoyer reported that he saw Leslie putting a suitcase in his car. Leslie said he was going to take a train to Brisbane. Leanne had been at a hospital in Brisbane since April 5th due to an unspecified medical issue. She reported that her father visited her in the hospital on April 21st and told her he was going to visit Lachelle on the Sunshine Coast. But we already said it, right? Leslie never met up with Lachelle.
So right now we have a gap, between the...
Almost a month, exactly. Yeah. April 21st to May 22nd. The Townsville Criminal Investigation Branch and the Queensland Police Service Homicide Investigation Unit worked Leslie's case. They discovered that his last bank transaction occurred on April 7th. Okay, what does that mean?
I don't know if it means a whole lot. I mean, if you took enough money out, you could probably make it last.
Well, I guess it probably doesn't mean much between the 7th and the 21st. Now, what I think it does is it starts to paint a picture after that date, moving forward.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, you should expect to see bank transactions. And when there are none, doesn't seem like a great sign.
No, it doesn't. Because you figure you're going to run out of money at some point based on what you withdrew at that time.
And I'm assuming by bank transactions, they're also, taking into account ATM withdrawals, debit card usage, and hopefully even credit card usage. A train ticket from Townsville to Brisbane was reserved by phone in Leslie's name on April 17th. His vehicle was found at the train station in Townsville. It had been parked there since April 19th or 20th. Leslie's family reported that he packed up all his belongings into his trailer because he was moving to Cardwell, where he was buying a house. Leslie had advised the Department of Veterans Affairs that he would be living at a new address.
So nothing out of the ordinary yet.
No, and I think this is some good information, right? The family says that he's moving, and it seems to be confirmed because he actually reached out to the Department of Veterans Affairs and said, hey, this is going to be my new address.
Yeah, send my checks here.
The family claimed Leslie left the house with his car and trailer while they were out. Margaret Ball and David Phillips reported that this was the same day Anthony Hoyer visited. So Leslie's contract on the house was supposed to settle on April 19th. He had made a $7,000 deposit on the house, but he didn't pay the remaining amount by April 19th, and the estate agent and solicitors could not get in contact with him. So to me, this goes kind of hand in hand with the bank transactions. This is a very bad sign.
It is.
$7,000 is a lot of money. And if you knew that you had to pay the rest by a certain time, normally, if you don't, you're going to lose maybe that entire $7,000.
Right. Why would you want to do that?
Nobody wants to do that. So it kind of paints a grim picture. On April 19th, Leslie's pension rail voucher was used to purchase the reserved train ticket from Townsville to Brisbane and a ticket from Brisbane to Dalby. On April 20th, his gold lotto card was used to purchase a lottery ticket in Townsville.
So his voucher and card was used, but it didn't say he used it. It's just that the voucher and card was used.
No, but none of this is striking me as out of the ordinary because we know he was seen on the 21st. On April 20th, Leslie didn't board the train from Townsville to Brisbane. Then on April 22nd, he didn't board the train from Brisbane to Dalby. So I just mentioned that I really wasn't all that concerned about anything that happened before the 21st. But now I'm starting to feel as though we should be, right? He misses the closing on the house. He didn't board the train to Brisbane on the 20th. But yet, Leanne said he visited her in the hospital in Brisbane on the 21st. So how'd he get there?
Yeah, mystery.
That part is definitely a mystery. And we only really have her word that he was there. I don't know that there's any corroboration to that. Train attendants were shown photos of Leslie and told the police that no one traveled in his seat and no one matching his description was seen on the train. A handwriting expert later said it was probable that the signature on the travel voucher was not Leslie's. Again, more bad signs. But probably most disturbingly, in May 1993, Leslie's trailer and his belongings were found burning in some bushland about 10 minutes from the Phillips home.
No, I think that's a problem.
Well, it's definitely a problem. It's also very suspicious. I want to go back to Leslie's car because we said that, his vehicle was found at the train station. Well, obviously his trailer was not there. So what does that mean?
It seems like someone took his trailer, drove it out to this bushland, and burned all his belongings. Why would you want to do that?
And who would want to do that? And did they use his vehicle, disconnect the trailer, and then drive the vehicle back to the train station and park it?
And then later come back to burn the trailer since it was found burning?
A lot of questions.
Yeah.
And they're all pretty mysterious. Along with, who signed the travel voucher. The handwriting expert said it most likely was not Leslie. So who was it? A coroner's inquest was opened in 1994 to investigate Leslie's suspected death. The findings were delivered on August 18th, 1995. You ever notice when we do these cases in Australia that these coroner's inquests, they take quite a length of time?
Yeah, they do.
Almost like a trial. Or the time to get to trial.
Yeah.
Trials don't normally last that long, but
They're definitely doing their diligence on the investigation.
They either are very, very detailed or they must take a lot of breaks in between, I'm thinking. Because it seems like a lot of them take a year or so. David and Leanne Phillips did not give evidence at the inquest because of unspecified medical conditions. The coroner accepted that the signature on the travel voucher was not Leslie's and that Leslie did not travel to Brisbane. Okay, so that's one of the things that we talked about. What does that mean for Leanne when she said that he visited her on the 21st?
Because at this point, they're calling her a liar.
Well, they're saying that he didn't travel by train. Could he have gotten there another way? It doesn't seem likely. If you parked your car and you pre-booked a train ticket, why would you then choose to take a different mode of transportation?
Right. Did a buddy come along and said, hey, I'm going to do a walkabout or I'm going to...
You think he walked to Brisbane?
I just wanted to use the word walkabout.
Okay. Because he was 71 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that it couldn't happen, but, maybe somebody came along and said, hey, I'm going that direction. You want to ride with me?
Very
Talk
unlikely.
about our good old days.
Yeah, very unlikely though, right? I think the bottom line is it calls Leanne's statements into question.
Yeah, I think so.
According to a document from the Coroner's Court of Queensland, the coroner found that some person or persons have deliberately tried to convey the impression the missing person traveled to Brisbane by train, leaving his vehicle unattended at the Townsville railway station. Attempts have been made by person or persons unknown to destroy or conceal the whereabouts of his trailer and personal effects. It is clear the missing person was at the time preparing to leave his daughter and son-in-law's premises. There are strong indications to suspect the disappearance of the missing persons may be other than by his own intentions.
Well, that says it all, but doesn't say enough.
That's a real Gibbyism.
Yeah.
You got there. It says it all, but doesn't say enough. It does say some things. I think it says pretty much everything except who they believe was responsible and what ultimately happened to Leslie.
Yeah.
True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Angie's List is now Angie, the home to skilled neighborhood professionals. Angie is your home for everything home, and they've made it easier than ever to connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. If you own a home, you know how much work it can take, whether it's everyday maintenance and repairs or making dream projects a reality. It can be hard just to know where to start, but now all you need to do is Angie that and find a skilled local pro who will deliver the quality and expertise you need. Angie has over 20 years of home service experience, and they've combined it with new tools to simplify the whole process. Bring them your project online or with the Angie app. Answer a few questions, and Angie can handle the rest from start to finish, or help you compare quotes from multiple pros and connect instantly. And all of that means you can take care of just about any home project in just a few taps, because when it comes to getting the most out of your home, you can do this when you Angie that. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. Leslie's case went cold for years. Investigators had little evidence as to what happened to him. Over a decade later, in 2011 and 2017, the Queensland Police Service decided to reinvestigate Leslie's disappearance after doing 2 reviews. David and Leanne Phillips, as well as Anthony Hoyer, were considered persons of interest and were formally interviewed on video. And I could see why those people would be considered persons of interest. We said Anthony Hoyer was believed to be the last person to have seen Leslie alive.
Right.
And David and Leanne, he was staying with them, was supposed to move out. Leanne gives a statement that doesn't seem to ring true. So you could see that.
Yeah, and if it was true, then she would have been the last person
to have seen him. David Phillips died on August 1st, 2015. According to his death certificate, he died after suffering a traumatic subdural hematoma from a head injury. Around the time of the second review, a new witness named Brian Murphy, a former police officer and a friend of David Phillips, told the police that David confessed to killing Leslie in 1995. Well, there's a bombshell.
Yeah.
If you're the police, the problem is at this point, David's passed away. So this guy doesn't come forward until after he died.
Right.
So you can't go talk to David. You
can't confirm anything.
Can't confirm it through him. Brian Murphy met David in the 1980s and they reconnected in the 90s. David made his statements without any prompting from Murphy. This is according to Murphy, obviously.
Right.
The following information comes from a 2017 report written by a detective. Brian Murphy reported that David told him he once took his father-in-law into the garage. According to Murphy, David made the following statements. After I took him into the garage, I beat him to death. There was blood everywhere. I tried to clean it up, but I don't know if I got it all. Something to the effect of, I nearly pulled his windpipe out. Finally, David allegedly said, I met this guy at the pub that looked just like my father-in-law. He helped me pick up the body, and we took it out and buried it in a grave that I dug. And then I put him in the same grave. The car we used was dumped at a train station.
Bizarre statement.
Yeah, I mean, these are always bizarre to me. Could somebody confess to a friend? Yes, they could. I don't know why they would. If you killed someone and up to that point, police haven't been knocking your door down, why would you tell anybody else about it?
Especially knowing he was a former police officer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then the second thing that really kind of threw me for a loop was I met this guy at the pub that looked just like my father-in-law.
And I trusted him enough to say, hey, come back.
Help me bury this body.
Yeah. And then I'm going to kill you and bury you too.
Why does it have anything to do that he looked like his father-in-law? I just thought all of it was strange, that part. Now, during Leanne's 2017 interview, she denied knowing anything about Leslie's disappearance or David's potential involvement. She said David had a stroke in 1994 and had been suffering from mental illness for about 20 years. He lied often. David was also violent to her after the stroke. However, she said he had a good relationship with her father. Leanne maintained that she was pretty sure Leslie visited her in the hospital on April 21st, 1993. Okay, pretty sure.
Is a little change in
the statement.
Well, she was not feeling well.
That's true.
And maybe, I don't know, she could have got the dates wrong, or maybe this look-alike person
came to visit her after helping David bury the body.
Maybe. I don't know. It's all very bizarre.
But pretty sure seems like you're kind of couching your words so that it can't possibly come back on you.
Right.
It's like on the stand when somebody says, I don't recall that, or I could have, but I have no memory of that. I don't remember that specifically. When you say something in a certain way, it's hard to then pin you down.
Yeah.
Because you're not being concrete about it like it seemed like she was being years earlier. The Phillips daughters recalled that Leslie disappeared while Leanne was in the hospital, and their grandmother, Margaret Ball, was taking care of them. They denied that their parents were involved in his disappearance. Rochelle Phillips said she was in the hospital in Townsville for an appendectomy, and Leslie called her during her stay. Medical records confirmed that Rochelle was in the hospital and that she did receive a phone call on April 15th. When she got home on Friday, April 16th, Leslie wasn't home. Samantha Phillips said Leslie disappeared on a school day, but Danielle and Jacqueline reported that Leslie disappeared on the day they went to see display homes. Margaret Ball and David Phillips indicated that they went to see the display homes on the Sunday after Rochelle got home from the hospital, which was April 18th. So I don't know what you make of all of this. I mean, it's been years by this point. Can people get dates wrong? Sure. I mean, I don't know that there's anything in here that is setting alarm bells off for me. And the fact that Rochelle received a phone call, even if it was from Leslie, it was on the 15th, and they don't believe he disappeared until 19th or the 20th. So
yeah, after that phone call, much later.
I don't even know what it means. The police found no forensic evidence in the Phillips' former garage, which was under new ownership at that point. In the 2017 report, a detective recommended that Mr. Ball is deceased due to an act of violence that occurred at the Phillips family residence. I believe that David Phillips is responsible for the death of Mr. Ball. So that's a strong statement, but it used the word recommended.
Yeah.
So I think you have to take some strength away from the statement. But nonetheless, this detective believes that David Phillips had a hand in the death of Leslie Ball. And the detective gave several reasons for his conclusion. First, Anthony Hoyer was not sure of the date he saw Leslie. Second, Rochelle Phillips remembered that Leslie disappeared while she was in the hospital, which meant he could have gone missing between April 15th and 16th after calling her and before she came home. Rochelle's records technically say that her father called her, but it is likely that the caller was Leslie. So, this guy's putting forth the theory that Leslie potentially disappeared and maybe was killed even earlier.
Especially if you take Anthony's statement away.
Well, that does change a lot of things because we were basing a lot of it on that sighting by Anthony being the last known sighting. And then third, David gave different versions of his story about the last time he saw Leslie, saying it could have been April 14th or 15th. Leanne's story also changed regarding what part of the hospital she was in when her father visited, but she maintained that the date was April 21st. Fourth, Leanne benefited from her father's estate after his disappearance.
That's a big one.
That is a big one because, you're looking at motive. Well, who had a motive? Somebody who stood to gain financially would have a motive, and Leanne and David did. Finally, David Phillips was the only person with motive and means to kill Leslie, according to the detective's report.
Hey, maybe they weren't happy about him moving out and going somewhere else, which meant maybe at some point they might not get what they thought was coming to them at some point.
I see where you're going. Yeah, I see where you're going. So if you're taking care of someone, is there a good chance that maybe they'll leave you a bigger share in their will? And I would say yes.
Yeah.
It's possible. Now, could it also have been that maybe he was sharing some of his VA check with them to help cover expenses or something like that? They started to rely on that.
Maybe.
And then when he said he was moving out, that would put a crimp on them financially. Possible. Just throwing out some different scenarios. Based on the 2017 report, the deputy state coroner wrote to the attorney general for direction. In February 2018, the attorney general directed that the inquest be reopened. A pre-inquest conference took place on June 5th, 2019. So again, things seem to take a long time.
Not moving too fast.
To get going. And once they do get going, the inquest seemed to take a long time. Megan Jarvis, the legal counsel assisting the deputy state coroner, told the coroner's court, as quoted by the Courier, police believe the motive for the murder was financial. There is evidence suggesting Leanne and David Phillips were reliant on Mr. Ball for money to live and for various costs.
Just as you said.
So that would go along with, my part of the theory. According to Jarvis, Leslie had just put a deposit on a property in Cardwell, but David had discussed plans for Leslie to help them build a house where they would all live together. Okay. Now, if all of this is true, you can start to see some of the pieces move into place.
Sure.
If they are reliant on his money to live, they're trying to keep him around. Hey, don't go buy your own place. Let's use some of your money. We'll buy a bigger house and we'll all live in it together. But if he says no,
right,
which he obviously did, or he wouldn't have put the $7,000 deposit down, then do they start to panic because they know they're not going to be able to make ends meet on their own?
I think they do panic.
Again, just all theories, but they're theories that kind of are born out of the statements made by the detectives, the coroner's court. And it doesn't surprise me that the police would believe that the murder was financially motivated. A lot of them are, especially when you're talking about family.
Yeah.
And standing to gain a lot of money if someone dies. You got to look at those people.
You do.
Jarvis also told the court that the police alleged Leanne Phillips had knowledge of her father's death and was not truthful with investigators. Okay. That's a big one.
It is. Not surprised, though.
No, I'm not surprised because if they think that David did it, it would probably mean that Leanne would have had knowledge of it as well. They probably would have talked about it, planned it. It would take over 3 years for the inquest to start due to several delays. I'm sure some of that was COVID.
Oh, I think so.
During the waiting period in July 2021, ABC News confirmed that despite a death certificate and burial record, David Phillips was not buried in a cemetery.
Interesting. Where is he?
I don't know, but we got mystery after mystery
We do.
here. This is like an episode of Scooby-Doo. At some point, we've got to unmask Old Man Rogers and find out why he was after these pesky kids.
Yeah.
That was always my favorite part. He's like, I would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky kids or you or meddling kids. Maybe that's what they would say.
You and your quotes.
When asked for comment, Leanne Phillips angrily told the outlet, he is dead. The police identified him and the coroner declared him dead. He died in a hospital. He was declared dead by doctors. So apparently it was said that David's body was exhumed and cremated. Leanne said David was not in a fit mental state when he asked to be buried. And in the past, he said he wanted to be cremated. Leanne moved and decided to have David's remains cremated so that she could take them with her. I wonder how many times that actually happens, because it's very expensive
Yeah.
to have a burial.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're going to, at least here in the States, without even paying for the plot, just to get ready to go into your plot, it's going to be $15,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do all that, dig somebody back up.
You got to pay for that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to pay for the cremation.
It's probably $7,000-8,000 at least.
Leanne also informed ABC News that David was sick for a long time before his death and was living in a care home. He normally wore a helmet due to past head injuries, but he fell when he was not wearing the helmet. So you and I talk about head injuries a lot.
We do.
Normally on True Crime all the time. I mean, this guy must have had some extremely serious head injuries if he was wearing a helmet around at all times. Basically, almost as if you have another fall and hit your head,
Yeah.
something
Could be it.
that could be it for you. And apparently that's
That was.
essentially what happened.
Yeah.
According to Leanne. When asked about the allegations against her, she said she had no knowledge of Leslie's death. The hearing for the inquest took place on August 22nd and 23rd, 2022. The deputy state coroner overseeing the inquest was Stephanie Gallagher. The inquest looked into the following issues: whether or not Leslie was deceased, if so, when, where, and how he died, and the identity of other persons involved in his disappearance. 5 witnesses gave evidence at the inquest. The first was William Nash, a new witness called at the request of the family. Nash was a former detective who retired in 2010. Margaret Ball believed Nash told her that Leslie's body was cemented in a car park at the Willows. Right? That sounds like some real mob type stuff.
It does.
Nash was previously the head of a task force investigating Victoria police officers. During the operation, he looked into the source of information given by Brian Murphy about the death of a sex worker, which implicated 2 Victoria police officers. David Phillips was the source of this information. Nash first spoke to David's sister, who said he was a suspect in the disappearance of Leslie Ball. And it was during this conversation he learned about a rumor that Leslie had been buried in a car park somewhere. Nash contacted the Queensland Police Service to let them know to interview David. In 2004, Nash spoke to David and Leanne Phillips several times and came to believe that David made up the information he gave to Brian Murphy. According to ABC News, Nash concluded that David and Leanne were not credible and that David was up to no good, adding, they told so many stories that contradicted each other, there wasn't a skerrick of truth. Now, I don't know what a skerrick is.
Thinking it's like a Shrek
Like a shred?
or a shred.
Did you say Shrek? So you think a skerrick is a big green ogre?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Or a shred of evidence.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense
Or
than
truth.
Shrek.
Yeah.
So he said this was all he knew about David and the Leslie Ball investigation. But that's a lot.
That is a lot.
If you think about it, It's kind of interesting that Brian Murphy and David Phillips come back into the picture in connection with the death of, some sex workers, and they believe that maybe some Victoria police officers are involved. But the fact that this detective is saying what I think a lot of other people have said, right? David and Leanne, they're not credible. They've told a lot of stories that, have contradicted each other. It's one of the reasons why I think, people who look at this case, they have to look at David and Leanne.
Of course.
And I think the police have as well. Margaret Ball contacted Nash in 2021, but he didn't know who she was. Margaret wanted to know if David Phillips was really dead. Nash said he was aware that David died in 2015 or 2016. He admitted that he spoke about the rumor of Leslie being buried in a parking lot, but denied saying it was more than a rumor or saying Leslie was buried in the Willows. Brian Murphy testified that David told him he killed Leslie in the garage at his house after confronting him about allegedly sexually interfering with one of his daughters. So that's a new piece of information.
It is a new piece.
Murphy said, according to 7 News, I couldn't believe that he was telling me. It was unsolicited. I don't know why he told me. Kind of back to my earlier point. I don't know why you'd tell anyone if you really did murder your father-in-law. Now, Brian is adding this piece that we didn't hear about before, which is David saying that his 71-year-old father-in-law had some type of inappropriate sexual contact with one of his daughters.
Allegedly is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
The problem I had with Brian Murphy, if he was previously a officer, wouldn't he feel compelled to bring this forward early?
You would, like, right after that,
yeah.
The next day or something like that. You would think so. And the fact that he didn't, does that cause him to lose some of his credibility? According to ABC News, Brian said that David told him, I got him in the shed, told him what I knew. Then I bashed the shit out of him. I gave him such a thrashing. I had him up against the wall. I all but got his windpipe out of his throat. Now, so here again, this is a different story, unless garage and shed are interchangeable.
And it could be.
Because at first he did say garage.
He did.
But shed could be used interchangeably over there.
Maybe in Australia.
I don't think here you would ever say shed when you really mean garage.
No.
Because they are two very different things.
They are. But I mean, I can see a father's anger coming out at that moment if he just heard his daughter tell him that, hey, granddad did this to me. I can see where emotions fly. Oh
yeah. If any of this was true,
yeah,
I could see that. David said he found a man who looked like Leslie at a hotel and brought him to his house. David claimed he had to find someone who looked like Leslie because one of their neighbors always watched who was coming and going. It waved at everybody, and they were using Leslie's car to dispose of the body. Okay. So that's the answer to the question of why are you looking for or meeting or using a person who looks like your father-in-law?
It's a little strange still to me.
It's still, yeah, the questions remain, though, of why this guy who just happens to look like your father-in-law would go along with your plan of disposing of his body. Hey, man, I'm just trying to drink my Fosters here. I'm not burying any bodies.
Good job bringing up Fosters.
You like that, don't
yeah.
you?
You're a real Crocodile Dundee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Murphy said at the hearing, as quoted by ABC News, the next thing he said, he gave it to the old bloke and buried both of them. He said, I put him in the same grave.
This is the part I don't really like because it doesn't make sense to me. If you're really upset about what your father-in-law did to your child, one thing. But now you're going to kill a innocent man as a cover-up?
Innocent, but just helped you bury a body and knows that you killed your father-in-law?
Yeah.
So that part is less confusing to me than the lookalike agreeing to bury the body.
Yeah, that's true too. The whole thing's somewhat bizarre.
Absolutely. But I think that's what happens when you tell a bunch of stories, right? You've said it before. Once you start telling stories, how do you keep it straight? And if you can't, then you got to add elements that bring it back around to where it was before.
To try to
make sense again.
Yeah.
Murphy told the court that he thought David was, quote, bull dusting, but the details about the lookalike made him believe David, which I don't know why that would make you believe it. But
yeah, I mean, either.
I think one thing that we have to remember is all of this part that we've been talking about is coming from Brian Murphy.
Sure. Yeah.
So believe him, don't believe him. According to news.com.au, Murphy said, by this time, I was convinced he had done these things. I couldn't believe it. Anthony Hoyer admitted at the inquest that his recollections faded over time, but the coroner still thought he was a credible witness. And again, so much time has gone by. I mean, how could your memories not fade?
Oh, I think it would be hard to remember everything after that much time.
Coroner Stephanie Gallagher noted that in the 2017 report, a detective wrote that Hoyer may have seen Leslie on April 11th, 1993. However, the coroner's inquest found evidence that did not support this. So that would have been much earlier than the date that Anthony said before. Anthony Hoyer said he initially thought he saw Leslie on a Sunday, but suggested it could have been a weekday because the girls were not home and he thought they could have been at school. He agreed that his first statement from 1993 was the most accurate, meaning it's likely that Leslie was last seen alive on April 18th. And I think there's some truth to that. If people are being honest, then your statements made after the time that something happens are going to be the most accurate.
Sure.
Not your memories,
all these years down the road,
almost 30 years later.
But did he see Leslie or did he see Leslie's lookalike?
We don't know. We don't know who's telling the truth.
We don't.
And it's one of the big problems. Margaret Ball last saw Leslie at the Phillips house on April 14th around 9:30 a.m. Rochelle Phillips said Leslie called her at the hospital on the 15th. David saw Leslie at home on the 16th as he left for work. The legal secretary at a conveyancing firm took a call from Leslie around 12:45 p.m. on April 16th. She had never spoken to him before and could not confirm his voice. The caller said he would call or stop at the office on Monday, April 19th. So I don't know what you make of that at all. That's not really a confirmation of anything other than someone called. It could have been Leslie or it could have been someone else pretending to be Leslie.
Because she doesn't know what his voice sounds like.
Yeah. David Phillips also said Leslie called the house on the evening of the 16th. His daughter, Samantha, answered and gave him the phone. Samantha confirmed she spoke to Leslie, but could not confirm the date. And again, I think confirmation on a lot of things would be very tough this many years, after things occurred. David and Margaret confirmed that they went to see display homes with the girls on April 18th and came home to discover a note from Leslie mentioning a visit from Anthony Hoyer.
Well, if that's true, then that confirms Anthony's report as well.
Because it's the same date. Yeah. During the inquest, Leanne maintained that Leslie called her on April 19th to tell her he would come visit her in Brisbane and that she saw him around 8:30 p.m. on April 21st. However, this is inconsistent with the evidence that police gathered. And I think we've talked about it. They just didn't believe that it happened.
Right.
And they didn't find her credible. Leanne called the allegations of sexual abuse against her father disgusting lies. She said that David and Leslie got along with each other and they even played golf together. Now, Leanne's statements were consistent with her previous statements over the years, according to a document from the Coroner's Court of Queensland. The coroner did not believe she was deliberately lying or withholding evidence. The coroner found that Leslie had a genuinely held but mistaken belief that Leslie visited her at the hospital. And that's pretty interesting.
It is.
When you think about it. He's not coming out and calling her a liar. He's just saying she's mistaken.
Yeah. And she doesn't know that she's wrong.
Yeah. But she genuinely believes it. She said that after having a stroke, David lied, was violent with her, and experienced psychotic rages. He did not act this way when Leslie went missing. The final witness was Detective Senior Sergeant Christopher Knight. Man, I love that guy.
What, from New Kids on the Block?
No, it's Peter Brady.
Oh, Peter. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently he was also the current investigating officer.
Just happens to be.
Mm-hmm. He told the court he believed David told the story about killing Leslie to Brian Murphy, but did not say he believed David was telling the truth. And that makes a lot of sense. So that means he thinks Brian's telling the truth, that David really did tell him the story, but he doesn't believe David was telling the truth, if that makes sense. Knight also said he struggled to believe Leanne's evidence because David and Leanne maintained the story that Leslie visited Leanne in the hospital despite evidence indicating otherwise. An inference could be drawn that they were involved in a cover-up and had some knowledge about what happened to Leslie. And that's kind of been my thinking throughout this episode.
Yes.
I'm not saying they did it because I have no idea.
No, but
well, my head was kind of going there because of this statement of, Leslie visiting Leanne in the hospital. On that date, she's either lying, mistaken,
yeah,
truthful, even though the police say they found evidence to the contrary. And if she's lying, what would the reason be? It would be because her father was already dead by that point. But she's trying to put him in Brisbane on the 21st.
Which takes the suspicion away from
them. Knight did not see any evidence that Anthony Hoyer was involved in Leslie's disappearance. The findings of the inquest were delivered on June 13th, 2023. The coroner determined that Leslie Ball was deceased. If he were alive, he'd be over 100 years old. He had not been seen or heard from in 3 decades. There's no evidence Leslie started a new life somewhere else, but there is evidence suggesting there was an attempt to cover up the fact that he was missing. So I don't think that determination was all that hard to make. The guy was 71 years old when he went missing in 1993?
Yeah.
Very little chance that under any circumstances he would be alive today. The coroner found it likely that Leslie Ball died on or around April 18th, 1993. So you can see they're definitely going with the Anthony Hoyer visit as the last known sighting. This means they're totally discounting Leanne's hospital visit. The coroner found it likely that Leslie did not disappear voluntarily and that someone else was involved, but it's impossible to determine where Leslie died and how he died. Coroner Gallagher wrote that she could not include any statement that a person is or may be guilty of an offense, but she could find that David Phillips engaged in an act that caused Leslie's death if there was any evidence of this. Christopher Knight agreed at the inquest that the police had circumstantial evidence against David, but no forensic evidence. The coroner noted that if David had attacked Leslie, at least one person in the home or a neighbor may have seen or heard something. There likely would have been blood in the garage or in Leslie's car. But when the police looked at the car in 1993, they found no evidence that a body was transported in the vehicle. When they examined the garage in 2017, they found no traces of blood.
2017 is a long time.
It is, but we have heard time and time again, blood is hard to get rid of. It hides in little spaces. And they have found blood at locations many, many years later. But for me, it's kind of, this nagging thing that I have, which is, what does the absence of something mean versus actually finding something?
Right.
And I don't think they carry the same weight. right? The fact that 24 years later, they didn't find any blood. Does that mean that there couldn't have been blood or that he wasn't killed in that garage? I don't necessarily know that it means that.
Yeah, I don't think you could rule it out.
And we don't even know if he was killed in the garage. I have no idea. Because most people in this story don't seem all that credible.
They do not.
The police also looked into whether another man who looked like Leslie went missing around the same time, but there was no evidence of this. So this is the father-in-law doppelganger theory.
So it kind of discredits that whole story even more so.
The coroner found no evidence implicating anyone in Leslie's death or disappearance.
I still go back to, why was his trailer taken 10 miles away from where he was living and burnt? Why?
I don't know.
Unless you're trying to cover something up.
Maybe they knew there was something inside there that would point to the killer. I really have no idea.
Yeah, we're just trying to get rid of it all together.
I don't know if I've been more baffled by a case in a long time than this one. But I understand why the coroner is saying that, you know, they can't find evidence implicating anyone in Leslie's disappearance or death. I think there's a strong lean in one direction, but that's a far cry from having the evidence, right? To charge someone, to prove it in court. There's a big difference.
There is.
Leslie's family, including his daughter, Lachelle, wrote submissions with the reasons they thought the court should find that David, Leanne, and Anthony Hoyer were involved in Leslie's death. But there just wasn't enough evidence to make this finding. In her conclusion, the coroner wrote, the evidence is insufficient for the court to make firm findings in respect of what happened to Mr. Ball.
That's just the reality of it, right?
It is. And I don't think it's any different, you know, here in the United States. I mean, this is a coroner's inquest, but, you know, we see the same thing in unsolved cases here all the time. There are people who look really good on paper. They might be the police's prime suspect, but they don't have the evidence that they need to charge them or, you know, try them in court.
Yeah.
So what do? You can't move forward if you don't have the evidence, because they're just going to get off and then you can't really do anything to them, you know, if it's a murder or whatever. So basically 30 years later, what happened to Leslie Ball remains a mystery. You know, as it was noted in the coroner's findings, we said, right, pretty reasonable to assume Leslie is no longer alive. And I think it's pretty reasonable to assume his death involved some sort of foul play.
Yeah.
He was 71 years old, but he was not suffering from any known health problems. He was pretty socially active and involved with his family, and he was making plans for his future.
He was
moving, buying a new house. You know, it's interesting to me as we wrap this up that they had a number of coroner inquests. You know, they reopened the case a number of times over the last 30 years or so. But I think based on the findings of the most recent inquest, it's probably pretty unlikely that this case will ever be solved.
I think it's going to be very difficult
because they've done so much work on it and so much time has gone by that people have died.
Right.
Witnesses have changed their story many, many times. And
which is a disaster for a prosecutor, right?
Well, and you know, they're not going to get better with more time. Right. You don't gain clarity usually with time. Things get fuzzier. Yeah. So, but it's a very fascinating case. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I think if you look at the comments online surrounding this case, there's no doubt that a lot of people lean towards David and or Leanne, right? Or both having a hand in her father's death, but it's just speculation because it can't be proven at this point. And I don't think it ever will be. But that's it for our case on the disappearance of Leslie Ball. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Liddy from Dallas. I've been a fan for a long time now. I've been listening to TCAT for a few years now. And now I'm going through the Unsolved, and I was just listening to the episode about the severed feet. I'm going with the most recent episodes, and I realized that you guys were talking about some shoes, including some Reebok shoes. And I was like, what brand is that? I figured I'd check it, and it turns out I've been mispronouncing Reebok my whole life. I've been saying Reebok. Anyway, so guess I'm learning English with the podcast as well. I thought it was hilarious because my best friend and I were like Mike and Gibby ourselves. And I'm Gibby. I'm always mispronouncing things, and he's always correcting me. And I thought that was hilarious because now I'm learning new words with you guys. Anyways, thank you for everything you guys do. This is amazing. Love you guys. And stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Well, that's cute. She thinks I mispronounce things.
She does.
I don't know why people think that.
She thinks I correct you.
I'm always correct.
Reebok. That was funny, though.
That was funny.
Criminology is a true crime podcast. May contain discussion about violent or disturbing topics. Listener discretion is advised. Oh, sorry, guys. Wrong podcast. Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. This is Dave from Reno, Nevada. Just wanted to say thank you for your podcast. I've been listening since probably 2019. Proud Patreon supporter. Love the work that you guys are doing. I just had a quick suggestion. I'm wondering if you guys have the Kristen Smart case on your list. It's now a solved case, fortunately. I know there's been a lot of coverage, and Chris Lambert had done an amazing job on that podcast, but would love to hear your take it sometime, and maybe something you guys do down the road. But anyway, thanks for your podcast, and appreciate everything you guys do. Thanks.
Yeah, the case of Kristen Smart, definitely on the list. I felt like Morph and I might have done that on Criminology.
What's that?
Which is funny because, he started it out doing the intro to Criminology, which I got a kick out of.
I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I know you don't. But definitely on the list. Probably was on the list of Unsolved. We obviously definitely would do it on TCAT if we do it in the future. All right, buddy, got anything else you want to talk about?
No, do you want me to do my little water trick again?
No.
That didn't make you probably edited it out.
Yeah, I edited it out.
Unless you throw it on the back end for fun.
Where you almost spit all over the microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that will probably have to get edited out.
Okay.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
See what hit blockbusters are streaming free this month during Popcorn Summer Movies on Pluto TV. Watch Django Unchained or Transformers Dark of the Moon for an action-packed evening, or The Truman Show and School of Rock for a good laugh with the whole family. Plus, Pluto TV has thousands of other free movies available on live and on demand. Download Pluto TV on all your favorite devices for free and start streaming now.